session today is that patient recruitment and retention for trials is not a one-size-fits-all approach. It's no longer those big advertising campaigns that many of us knew in the early days of recruitment and retention. However, it's not necessarily just the tech-savvy digital world that we all see on a daily basis. It's more of a collaborative approach, and it's customized based on any given study. So in order to determine and build an effective strategy, we'll go ahead and review today how to assess your study and how you can go about determining at a high level what strategies might be the best fit, how to approach vendors and assess them in terms of various different bids and actual strategies that they may be recommending, what to look for in your vendor in terms of an operational approach, and then finally talk a little bit more about how to support and work with the sites to really help them optimize their enrollment and recruitment efforts. So we're going to go over just a couple of slides here that I think are going to be pretty familiar to most on the line. You know, patient recruitment and retention is a topic that is almost always discussed at every industry forum in some shape or form. But it continues to be one of the biggest hurdles we all run up against in the industry. And the environment that our client companies live and breathe is very difficult. As most are aware, you know, millions are lost every day due to various different reasons, one of the biggest being slow enrollment or lack of retention in a given program. You know, from company to company, we all struggle with cost containment initiatives, which really do tend to reduce timelines that we have to work in. It tightens our budgets, and it really forces our teams to build very robust risk mitigation plans up front. And of course, the expectations are greater than ever to deliver on time, on budget, and with quality. I think a lot of us in the industry kind of scoff at the question, is it time or money? Because it's always both. The statistics listed at the bottom of the slide is just really to help provide some insight into where the industry remains and used to substantiate really the environment our client companies live in. So from a patient and a site environment perspective, this is an ever-changing environment, but a lot of the stigmas and cliches that we commonly hear of still remain. You know, patients continue to receive mixed messages in the media about clinical trials, and at times may not even be encouraged to participate from their treating physicians. I think a lot of times, too, the day-to-day patient still believes that clinical trials are for life-threatening conditions, the cancers, the orphan indications, and they may not necessarily think of a trial as being an option for something, you know, that they're living with day-to-day, hypertension or asthma, something of that nature. Many organizations across our industry have launched initiatives through the years across the globe to educate patients, but not every patient has been reached, nor has every caregiver been reached. And it really is on us, each individual clinical team, for each individual study to take upon ourselves to make sure that we're educating our patient base. Sites are also living in a very fast-paced environment that changes day to day from a regulation standpoint, and based on published statistics as reflected here, many are struggling to achieve their enrollment goals. I firmly believe, with working with hundreds of sites across the globe for years, that no site ever sets out to fail. However, they're competing priorities, and as unexpected things come up in trials, the demands make it very difficult at times for them to meet their goals. So given the stakeholder environments and what would be considered as non-negotiables for the overall trial timelines, how can we optimize the timelines to impact some of those industry statistics that we all live and breathe? One of the key areas is focusing on that, what we can change, being at the front end, the project planning, designing studies that are such that are taking into account all of the stakeholders. It can be done by proactive planning, assessing vendors and engaging them up front to really foster a collaborative environment, and then ensuring an operational approach is implemented such that it will optimize the overall program and maybe just not bits and pieces of the program. Okay, so of course meeting the overall trial timelines start with planning and assessing a given study to determine what may be needed in terms of patient recruitment and retention. So from a proactive planning perspective, I would like to think that most teams, most companies go into a new study with the proactive planning mindset. The value of planning, or lack thereof, is frequently quoted, and I hear it frequently even in our clinical team settings. One of my favorites by Benjamin Franklin, by failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail. It seems so simplistic, but oftentimes it's glazed over when all of us are worried about budgets and getting those SIVs up and running. The planning process can be minimized at times during the hectic study startup. One of the purposes of proactive planning is really to establish the gaps in timelines that many of us have to work to, and assessing the overall trial timeline to really establish what the biggest risks are. And it may or may not be determined that those risks can be impacted by planning, but nonetheless they become there's an awareness of those risks.